Hello, and welcome to a special Monday edition of Business Pants, where Matt Mascardi is broadcasting live.
Keep your voice down. I am inside a financial institution.
Inside the belly.
This is guerrilla.
Yeah.
This is guerrilla free float media right here.
I like it. I prefer this. You know me.
Yeah, I do not. I do, actually.
Of course, as your sound cuts out a little bit because you're broadcasting inside of a dank gray office.
I will say.
How's it going, Matt?
I will say technical difficulties are highly likely, given
It's all right.
given these companies, they're watching us.
What brings you to the mothership today, Matt? You're attending a conference?
I attended a small conference of like-minded individuals in which everyone talked randomly about items that mostly no one cared about. So
Oh,
it was that kind of
well,
day.
Okay, well, that, I guess, I don't know what to say about that. I'm glad I'm not there, as usual.
This is what wearing business pants are like. I'm wearing pants today.
Yeah.
I actually put
Yeah.
on business pants. So
Well, to be fair, so am I, so go screw yourself.
which
I'm
isn't
Damien
always
Rollis.
the case. It's not always
That's
the
Matt
case.
Mascardi. We are Free Float Media. This is the Monday edition of our daily look at corporate news from a fun point of view. Fact-based, but fun.
Let's go over. What do we have on the agenda today?
We are going to look at a little battle in between FedEx and the New York Times, which is fun.
Is it though?
I don't know. It could be. We're going to go inside the pants because you are in the belly of the beast today, and we're gonna talk about some environmental news because no one else does. We have yet another question from one of our esteemed listeners. And a bunch of biz nuggets, and Matt is making something in Matt Makes.
There is something to be made. I made it on the road.
Good.
So we'll see if I make any sense making whatever I made.
Yeah, and if the audio doesn't cut out. Okay. Well, let's get at it.
Let's do this thing.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I want to start off today in our wars segment, okay? And I want to talk about one of the most fascinating parts of covering corporations in the Twitter age. And that's this. Sometimes
Nothing.
CEOs get feisty and fight back. Okay, Matt?
We're
here's
CEOs
the background.
billionaires now?
Here's the background. Taxes. So the New York Times reported that FedEx, like much of corporate America, has not made good on its promised investment surge from President Trump's 2017 tax cuts. So here's the win for FedEx. Its effective tax rate fell from 34% in 2017 to less than 0 in 2018.
Wait,
So that
less than 0?
Yeah, that's what the New York Times is reporting. So that while FedEx owed more than $1.5 billion in taxes in 2017, it owed nothing in 2018. Okay? So here's the analysis. It shows that there is no statistically meaningful relationship between the size of the tax cut that companies received and the investments they made. Okay?
Okay, that's like This Week in Duh.
Yeah, but right. But this is what they promised. Okay, so why is FedEx an easy target? Because FedEx lobbied hard for Trump's tax cut, and the public face of its lobbying effort was FedEx founder and CEO Frederick Smith, who repeatedly took to the airwaves to champion the power of tax cuts. So in itself, this is a story worth covering. It's something we would typically talk about. But what makes today's headline all the more fun is that FedEx is punching back at the New York Times, Matt.
Can we back up to the part where the founder's name is Fred Smith?
Frederick to you.
Could you have, seriously, anybody that could be anybody. That's everybody's name.
just so happens to be the founder and CEO of a company that no longer pays taxes.
I would run an analysis whether or not when there's a tax cut, CEOs and management get paid more.
All right, well, it's something we should be looking into.
That seems like a free float research project.
Don't we have a new intern today named Mike?
We do. Mike is going to join us shortly.
Okay.
I found him outside. He seems nice enough.
Okay.
Apparently he has his own podcast. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Who doesn't, though?
So here's the punchback from CEO Fred. Ready? This is a quote. Pertinent to this outrageous distortion of the truth is the fact that, unlike FedEx, the New York Times paid zero federal income tax in 2017 and only $30 million in 2018. Also, in 2018, the New York Times cut their capital investments nearly in half to $57 million, which equates to a rounding error when compared to the $6 billion of capital that FedEx invested in the U.S. economy during the same year. So here we go, Matt. Here's where CEO Fred Smith gets frisky. I hereby challenge A.G. Sulzberger, publisher of the New York Times and the business section editor, to a public debate in Washington, D.C. with me and the FedEx corporate vice president of tax.
I was hoping for an actual fight. I thought it was going to be like, I hereby challenge A.G. Sulzberger to meet me in the parking lot behind a local FedEx.
And notice that Fred won't be doing this debate alone because he's showing up. He wants to show up with his corporate vice president of tax to make this fight absolutely no fun.
Every Rocky has a Mickey in their corner. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So AG, you can come alone, but I'm bringing my corporate vice president of tax.
But I mean, the extreme irony is that FedEx is right and the New York Times is right. None of them pay taxes, really, right? Like the tax rules are such that you can roll over, carried interest. You can write down. You can, every time you depreciate something, you can use earnings management to make it look like you paid less. And worse than anything, all of the disclosure around taxes, all of the analysis that the Times has to do is basically like a version of guesswork, because there is no disclosure around actual, no one actually says we paid $20 in taxes this year. I have to say that on my tax form. I don't know about you. Do you have to do that?
Do I have to disclose my?
Do you pay taxes? Free Float Media, as of this point, currently pays no taxes.
Yeah, I was going to say this year might be a bit different for me. But, starting a new business is tough at the beginning, right?
We need Freddie Smith's tax counsel on our side.
Maybe we can get Freddie to FedEx our podcast to our listeners.
We've got one of those. Do you think this spirals? Do you think this becomes like an actual war, like the streaming wars, like companies pissing amongst themselves about who pays more taxes and who doesn't?
Yeah, or is this just sort of is this an attachment to the whiny billionaire thing? Like, are they just are they sick of being called out for being jerks?
I don't know. Yeah, admittedly, the tax rules are nearly impossible to follow. So,
great. That's the best news I've heard in a while. I hope everyone is hearing Matt, because he's definitely cutting out a bit for me. So I'm just going to pretend that the listeners hear Matt, and I'm going to pretend like I hear everything Matt is saying today.
Honestly, I haven't said anything worth listening to yet. So,
okay.
Thank you for joining our show.
Let's move on. Let's go inside the pants.
Every time.
In honor of Matt's visit to the mothership today, let's look at what's new in environmental news. And actually, someone tweeted at me. Yes, I actually have a Twitter account.
Wait.
Scary.
Quiet. There's someone corporate walking by. Hold on.
Okay.
All right. We're clear.
Hide your sense of humor.
Quick,
So somebody
take off your
tweeted at
normal
me
pants and put on your business pants.
that they were lamenting the fact that mainstream media does not cover environmental news, and I said, well, listen to us because we actually cover stories in the environment, right? And she seemed very happy, so this is for her. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, ESG,
Catering to the
right?
crowd.
The E in ESG, huh? Right? Huh? Okay. All right, let's go.
Just a
We got
slave to the crowd.
four little stories today. First, two of America's biggest coal plants closed this month. This week, Arizona's Navajo generating station burned its last load of coal after no buyers turned up during a 2-year search.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
They were like, no one bought this stuff. We should just light it on fire. What a terrible idea that is.
The Navajo station emitted about 20 million metric tons of carbon dioxide each year, equivalent to 3.3 million cars. Good for you, Navajo generating station. The second one closing is Pennsylvania's Bruce Mansfield unit, the state's largest coal-fired plant. Next up in 2020 is Kentucky's Paradise plant. That's some good naming there. Are you sad, Matt?
I'm a little sad for Trump's economic policies, which were partly predicated on saving the entire coal industry. And it was so successful that apparently they just piled up some coal in their backyard and lit it on fire because nobody wanted it. So,
Okay.
No, not sad.
Is it bad of me that every time you say coal, I think colon?
Are these colon plants? That's a different kind of plant.
Next up, Senator Bernie Sanders and Congresswoman AOC unveiled a $180 billion Green New Deal for public housing. The legislation would retrofit 1 million units of federally owned housing and provide funding to add solar panels and secure renewable energy resources for all public housing. Roughly 40% of total U.S. energy consumption comes from residential and commercial buildings. It's a good one.
Yeah, that's just a genius idea. Why that hasn't happened yet? I mean, and I don't mean to like pander to a green crowd, Green New Deal, AOC, uber liberal crowd or anything.
In the corporate belly, yeah.
Yeah, especially here. Quiet. Keep your voice down.
Yeah.
But the fact is, just the economics of that are good, and as a social service, you're going to hire, hundreds of thousands of people to do it. It's kind of a win-win.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like
in general, things like any New Deal-y things, even if you put the word green in front of it, always seem like a win-win, especially if you make that crap here in the U.S.
Any deal that gets made ever just
Matt
seems...
likes all deals.
I just like deal makers.
Yeah. So reach out to us, people. Make us a deal. Next, the San Francisco Federal Reserve.
I was there.
Oh, good. Held the system's first climate change conference last week. So, Matt, a tipping point? Is this important?
Honestly.
Here?
So one of the speakers this morning was an ex-SEC guy. Mm-hmm. And the maybe tipping point. Tipping point. Everything's a fucking tipping.
Yeah,
everything's not a tipping point anyway.
I know.
I think it's interesting that
this show is a tipping point.
I think financial regulators are because as the EPA gets neutered and as other regulatory bodies get neutered, financial regulators seem to be more interested in this than average in the U.S. But everyone else, the SEC guy this morning at this conference I went to, he pointed out that like everyone else in the world has figured this out. It's like the U.S. hasn't. So, tipping point, I don't know.
In that vein, I like this story. A 24-year-old environmental scientist from Australia is suing his pension fund for not being green enough. So Mark McVeigh won't be able to access his retirement savings until 2055, but concerned about what the world may look like then, he's taking action now, suing his $39 billion pension fund for not adequately disclosing or assessing the impact of climate change on its investments. So here's the big question. are pension funds in breach of their fiduciary duties by failing to mitigate the financial ravages of a warmer planet?
First of all, you just breached your grammatical duties.
Did I?
Yeah, I don't even know what that
Who
word
has
was.
time to edit?
But I will tell you that
Yeah.
this actually reminds me of like the Amazon and Google employees. Like, hey, when Amazon went activist against Amazon, the employees actually filed for a proxy to have Amazon disclose its climate risks.
Okay.
I love it. I think it's like the only way this stuff actually the system is predicated on some sort of status quo in like the way the tug of war is with disclosure and stuff. This is the best way to get a court to clarify what a pension fund's fiduciary duty actually is.
All right.
I love it.
Yeah, good. See? Okay. Take that. People who think that we don't cover environmental news. Well, they don't. They think we do.
Take that, person on Twitter who said a thing.
On Twitter. Look, you got to start somewhere, man. All right. Let's go into let's move on. Let's jump into our viewer mailbag.
What do we got for mail today?
Okay. Once again, this is an actual question from an actual listener because clearly when you hear this question, you'll know that I'm not smart enough to make this one up.
I can attest to that.
And this is to a listener who would prefer to remain anonymous because, after all, who would want to be associated with
intelligent questions?
Yeah, I don't know. Here we go. If ESG/sustainability issues are meant to materialize for companies over the long term, does a hedge fund shorting strategy to be against sustainability laggards make sense to you? Whoa, that's okay.
All right,
Should I
so
repeat that? You got that?
Kind of. Let's back up. The first thing to understand is a shorting strategy, because if you don't know what a shorting, it's basically where you bet against the stock. It's like going to the craps table and betting on the don't come line instead of, like, what, I don't remember what the opposite one is, but you bet against the table. Nobody likes the short seller.
Sound like assholes.
But there is a theory, there is kind of an ESG, environmental social governance theory, that you short laggards because, if they suck at all this ESG stuff, eventually they're going to have some event happen and kills them. Right. Mm-hmm. But the problem with that strategy, that as a hedge fund strategy, is that these things materialize over a long time frame, as the question implies, right? Like a long-term strategy means you might be sitting short and it's really expensive and you might not see that event come out. What's interesting that's really happening is actually not a shorting strategy, and it's not necessarily in public markets. What's happening is investors are buying up sort of adaptation hedges, right? Like they go out. Last year, we were going to write about this. Last year, there are all these investors who are buying up land in the U.S. with water rights. Like farmland with water rights. And they weren't using it necessarily to farm. They were using it for the water rights. And it's not like, a farmer Ben. It's like Saudi Arabia is buying up U.S. land with water rights because there's a recognition that water is going to be an extremely scarce asset. And if it actually gets priced, you've hedged your adaptation. There are now water barons, and that's just one example. There's like a half dozen examples of like hedging yourself against extreme weather, climate, or ESG things by buying the thing that people are going to need when shit hits the fan. That to me is actually the short-term play that that most asset managers aren't sort of like built for, but is really going to happen, and it's not getting better. Like you can sit on your short as long as you want, but this is where you're going to make money probably in the short term. That is not that is not advice, by the way. Don't listen to a thing I just said.
I like that, actually. That was one of your best efforts there, answering our viewer mail. No, I really enjoyed that one. I actually learned something. Let's get out of this.
Let's stop learning things.
Rusty mailbag. Let's get out of this. This is where we want to be. It's lunchtime. It's time for some biz nuggets.
We got a special guest on today.
Oh, okay.
A BizNug guest. You like
He's
that?
hiding back
What up?
a smile, it looks like. Or maybe that's a genuine smile. I don't know.
Genuine, yeah.
Yeah, good.
This is-
Who am I talking to? Who are we talking to?
This is Mike. His last name has been redacted because he works for a corporate entity. Shh.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Quiet.
We don't want to.
They're
We don't
listening.
want to disturb the corporate gods here.
Yeah, look, I need healthcare, okay? I
Yeah.
don't know what you guys are doing. You're probably
Well, then don't
piggybacking off
vote
of
for
something. but-
Warren. No, do vote for Warren.
I'm getting my health care from Google. That's
Now
it.
you're completely cut out.
I-
I'm glad you guys are enjoying what you're talking about because your audio
I got.
sucks.
All I'm saying is I got my health care from Google. Now move on to the Biz Nuggets, please.
All right. Let's get into Biz Nuggets and guest Mike chime in if you want, or just make fun of Matt or whatever you want to do. Let's update our whiny billionaire segment. First up today, former Goldman Sachs CEO and chair Lloyd Blankfein, responding directly to Warren's most recent campaign ad, because of course it's always against Senator Warren. Here we go. And again, I quote, we don't make this shit up. Here we go. Vilification of people as a member of a group may be good for her campaign, not the country. Maybe tribalism is just in her DNA. Ooh, a nice little racist dig there. You like that?
I mean, he did say he agrees with a lot of what she says before that. So it's a racist agreement?
So you like Lloyd then? You liking this? Is that what you're saying?
This whole thing, I mean, even CNBC is saying this now. Billionaires, if you haven't gotten the memo, just shut your fucking mouths. For Christ's sake. You
As a
are
reminder-
an Elizabeth Warren ad every time you speak.
As a reminder, under Blankfein's watch, the SEC's largest ever penalty of $550 million was ordered against Goldman Sachs to settle charges that Goldman misled investors in a subprime mortgage product just as the U.S. housing market was starting to collapse. There you go.
Well, that's true. I don't understand. There's a difference between these billionaires and the companies that they run. And I don't understand why these guys even say anything. They're winning in general.
That's the question we have here. Why?
What is the point of it? And I like that they're doing this thing that they're saying that they're being attacked, because it's such a good, it's such a good kind of push against the liberals that they try to do this. They say, cancel culture's taking over and all these political correctness things are happening. But the conservative side does not allow way more debate than the liberal side. I mean, there are vast scores.
Right. Calm it down,
Vast
socialist.
scores
No, I like it. I
of
like it.
things that are undebatable on the right, and that's what's amazing about these billionaires kind of trying to claim the same thing. It's fascinating.
Apparently, we got like the Marxist in the corporate office. Go ahead.
Yeah, replacing Matt Moscardi in a month. One more from Leon Cooperman, our whiny billionaire numero uno, is saying this about Warren's wealth tax, which I love. I love this quote. It makes no sense and would lead to unnatural acts. What the hell is that? What do you think that means? Like marrying a goat or something? Leon's really coming for it.
Everything he says. I want to come
right.
back to billionaires in a second. So let's move on, and we'll come back.
Speaking of canceling culture, Google is canceling its weekly TGIF meetings as the company continues to crack down on its open work culture. Why is Google suddenly scared of TGIF meetings? Probably because employees have increasingly voiced their concerns about everything from the handling of sexual harassment to government hires and contracts. So, way to be crusty, Google.
This is kind of actually, they've been working to cancel these meetings for a long time now. They changed them from open forums where people would send in questions from a variety of offices to a much more formal discussion that seemed like a press conference where they would have prepared answers, prepared questions. This is kind of the last, it's the straw that broke the camel's back, but there's been a lot of straw.
It's like it's a little bit too much on the worker right. A little too much of a voice.
That's called insight, by the way. Just in case you were curious. What we do is not that.
Oh. A few quick gig economy nuggets. WeWork is set to lay off 4,000 workers. Yes, Adam Newman still is keeping his $1.7 billion pay for failure package.
Oh, thank God.
T-Mobile CEO John Legere will not be taking over the CEO job at WeWork, but will step down from T-Mobile. And disgraced Uber founder, king of Silicon Valley, Brotopia, Travis Kalanick, has sold more than $700 million in stock since Uber's lockup expired last week.
Duh.
Okay. All right.
Well, the best thing about the Adam Newman thing is this is the entire issue with the gig economy. Everyone that stayed at WeWork, they get all these, fancy coffees, and they probably got some nice snacks. But then they're getting laid off, and he's getting billions, and everyone's just kind of like, all right.
I think the best part of that is his lookalike John Legere is like, no, I can't even, there's no way I can do this.
The next big trend in technology will be smart glasses that we wear everywhere.
I will not.
Microsoft, Snap, Facebook, Google, Apple, and Amazon all developing smart glasses. What do you say, guys?
No.
No. Okay.
What a terrible idea.
Yeah, well, it's coming, man. And
Didn't they try to do this before? Didn't Google
Yeah, it was
Glass?
Google Glass. And
yeah,
the early adopters are always porn stars. It's usually the early adopter.
I'm not even mentioning Motorola's new flip phone, so I'll spare you that.
I'm for that.
Anheuser-Busch
I'm for that.
is investing $100 million in the new meatless meat adjacent fad known as hard seltzer. At the same time, the company has a new ad that encourages you to drink water in between beers. So what the hell?
Just drink
What-
hard water. Seltzer
Yeah, what they
spiked.
mean?
Yeah,
Like
I think
chase your beer with
Chase-
hard seltzer? I don't know what's going on.
chase your beer with water spiked with vodka. That's what they mean.
Lastly, a new invisible barcode technology is being piloted to help consumers figure out which items to recycle and to help machines and sorting plants figure out which items to recycle. How the hell are we still trying to figure out recycling, guys? What the blank? Why is this so hard?
We're too busy making our billions.
That's a good idea. I like that idea. Wait, what's wrong with that idea?
There's nothing wrong with the idea.
That's a
There's
great
nothing wrong
idea.
with it.
I think it's a
I just
great
wanna
idea.
know, why is it, Mike? Why is it taking so long?
Well, what the fuck have you...
Oh, I like it. I like it.
We just got okay
all right.
boomered.
I'm buzzing him out of biz nuggets. Let's go into Matt Makes. Let's make something, Matt.
Matt Makes. The billionaires save us.
Oh, let's do it, Matt.
All right. So here's what I got for you today. It occurs to me that all this fighting with billionaires is the wrong tactic. Okay? We need the billionaires. We actually need them to save us. I think they're right because, part of their argument is that they donate all their money to philanthropy and they donate more than anyone ever has, and they're doing so much good. And if I ignore the fact that they get to choose what to donate to, they are potentially our saviors. So what I want them to save us from is climate change. I should caveat this by saying, as a white male in his 40s, there's not a lot of things that people don't who are living in an affluent community. I don't get a lot of donations. So if I want the billionaires to save me, it's got to be something like climate change. That's the only way it's going to work, because they're not going to send me money for my poor white affluent privilege. So here's what I did. And you tell me if you can follow this logic, okay? First, I wanted to know where severe weather events actually happen, in the country. Because if a billionaire is going to save us from extreme weather, I should know where it actually happens. So I went on to a bunch of FEMA and NOAA and all of these government websites, and I pulled severe weather events as recorded for the last 2 years by U.S. county. Now, apparently, El Paso County in Colorado and Maricopa County are drought-stricken, terrible places, according to weather data. But on the surprise side, Fairfax County, Virginia. Did you know Fairfax County, Virginia had the third most severe weather events in the last 2 years?
Well, what's going on? What's
Well,
going on there?
apparently all that happens there is flooding. They're underwater. It's like Noah's
Okay.
Ark there.
All right.
So now I have this list of places where the billionaires are likely to go save them, right? Like from climate change. But it also occurs to me, if you were a billionaire, would you save the place you live in, or would you save the place that like some other schmuck lives in? Like they're not going to save they're going to save their house first. So I looked at the median income for the top 0.5% of households in the US, according to census data, and I mapped it against the severe weather events. And what you end up with is this list of counties where incredibly wealthy people live that there's severe weather. So in some form. Fairfax County is by far the worst. Billionaires live there, and they get a ton of negative, like shitty ass flood weather. Now, billionaires saving themselves is not what I'm going for here. So the last bit of looking I needed to do was whether or not they're going to save me. So what I did was I looked at places, I wanted to identify the counties that had the biggest disparity between rich and poor, because I have no money, and that means I can actually, but I need to live in a place where a billionaire lives, because they're not going to save me, they're going to save themselves, and I need to be able to afford to live there. So I looked at where's their biggest disparity between rich and poor, and where can I afford to buy a house using Zillow data. I downloaded a whole bunch of Zillow data. And what I end up with is places like Fairfax County, way too expensive. The median price of a house there is like $750,000.
Right.
Are you nuts, Fairfax County? You're fucking underwater. Stop charging so much money for your damn houses. But then I looked and I saw Hamilton County, Ohio. Now that's a place we can talk about, because $275 is the median sales price,